Clubhouse.
Welcome to Decorating the Set from Hollywood to your home with your hosts, Beth Kushnick and Caroline Daly.
Welcome to Decorating the Set from Hollywood to your home. This is Caroline. Hey, Beth.
Hi, Caroline. I'm happy and excited to share another great guest for this week's episode. This week, we sat down with Rachelle Williams, the executive producer and showrunner of Starz' critically acclaimed series, Run the World.
The timing is perfect on this one because Run the World returns for season 2 on Friday, May 26th at 9:30 Eastern and 8:30 Central on Starz and the Starz streaming platforms. Beth, I remember when you told me you had gotten the job as set decorator for season 2, you had mentioned that you hadn't taken over a show before, which seems shocking to me. But I know that it was discussed a little bit in the interview, but tell us a little bit about the process and the experience of getting a job for an existing show and how you handle coming into something that's already had an established look.
Well, it was the first time that I've been asked to take over for an additional season on a show. But I knew going in that this season 2, was going to be different just from the start. It was originally 4 stars in the show, and we knew that this season was going to be the 3 girls that remained. So that dictated some of the inner workings of the script writing and trying to figure out how to tell the story now for season 2. And there were a lot of story changes and hence a lot of opportunity to build some of the biggest sets that I've ever worked on for a TV show.
That's wild. I would never have guessed that, Beth, that this is the first time you would take over for someone else's work. I guess I take for granted that you've done so many things that surely this must have happened before. But for real, this is your first time taking over.
Yeah, it is. This is my year of firsts, taking over a show for a second season, doing a horror movie. It's really been interesting.
You're stepping out there, man.
Yeah,
Next time you're going to be like, I've been hanging out on AI a lot.
Yeah, out of my comfort zone.
I love it. Well, this week's guest, Rachelle Williams, was also new to the series this season. What impressed you most about Rachelle and seeing her work as not only an EP, but also the new showrunner?
Well, from the start, she was totally a calming influence on everybody. She set the tone and it was great, and also participated a lot, I found, both in my work and the production designer's work, the costume designer's work, all the pieces that sort of lend authenticity. And as we know, I love to do character-driven work. So I thought that was really something to have someone so involved. And she was really collaborative. As we said, when we talked with her, it was sort of an interesting scenario where the way that this job functioned, because we were working during COVID, was we all did go to the office and we were all sitting in small individual offices, all but opened on an area that was a bullpen where the production office was. But we were all there and also meeting on Zoom. Was sort of the best of both worlds, something that I hadn't experienced before, because you knew that if you really needed someone, they were right there. But we did the Zoom thing, which works really well. And I think the best thing about working on that job was just the collaboration was so nice with everybody, every department.
I love when you said that she was like a really calming influence. That type of person is so welcome on those types of jobs that are so busy and chaotic. Have like a big warm blanket come on. You're like, yay.
That's her personality and her style. It's wonderful.
That's terrific. I mean, that brings such good vibes to any set. And I know for you, you said like, you know, this year you've had a lot of new things, but really the last 3 years, really since 2020, every day seems to be something new that you have to adjust within your job.
Yes.
So, I mean, looking at this challenge of this show, was there something new that you did with your set deck work on Run the World that you could elaborate a little bit for our listeners?
There was. I think telling the story of 3 young women in Harlem is a new story for me to tell and to put my eye on and my concept of style on. And I think we pushed the envelope a little bit. I think we went back and redid some things that weren't working. I try to take the trend out of my work. You know, I try to do things visually that really will last and not stand out too much, but support the story, the script, and the characters. But for this, we got to go a little wild. We did a big wedding with incredible flowers. We did an art studio with very authentic, all different kinds of art that turned into a wedding venue, another wedding venue. And we did, I would say, less traditional, more arty and creative work. And then we built an apartment, a huge set that was really interesting. It had outdoor space that we built, and we green screened the outside. So there were a lot of things that pushed both the envelope, and I'd say I had a pretty good budget. So it was it was really nice.
That's awesome.
I've talked about, you know, ordering wallpaper from overseas, and I think I was the most challenged by supply chain issues, and yet found some new vendors and got lucky with some old ones, and it all worked out.
Well, I'm really excited for everyone to hear this interview, so let's get to it. Now our interview with Rachelle Williams, executive producer and showrunner on Starz Run the World. Oh, and it's not your ears, you guys. This is Beth with our wonderful producer, Mike, who jumped in at the last minute to cover for me on this interview. So thank you so much to Mike for doing that. And please enjoy our interview with Rachelle Williams.
Joining us today is Rachelle Williams, the executive producer and showrunner of the Starz critically acclaimed series Run the World. Rachelle, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being with us. You started as a writer and have a Bachelor of Science from Boston University. Tell us a bit about your path to Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, it was kind of zigzaggy. But yeah, I'm born and raised in Stone Mountain / Lithonia, Georgia, kind of split growing up between those 2 towns right outside of Atlanta. And from jump, like from the moment that I didn't have like a biology teacher in 9th grade is somehow how I got into writing and creative writing. And I just was like, by 9th grade, I was like, I think I want to be a screenwriter. That was the career I decided on. I started writing really terrible little movies and projects in high school that no one ever read. I wrote more stuff in college that no one ever read. And then finally, but after I graduated from BU, I mean, people read some stuff, but I was always like kind of very shy and reserved. And, you know, in college, I kind of got out of my shell a little bit. And then, you know, when I graduated from college, it was time to make that big move. And, you know, do you go to New York? Do you go to LA? I went back to Atlanta for a few months and I said, no, this isn't it. And drove across the country in my old Jeep and my mom helped me. And I just packed a Jeep full of stuff and didn't go right to Hollywood. Went to Van Nuys first and found that's in the Valley. And I found a studio apartment that was somewhat affordable. And yeah, but the goal was to be a writer. Me and an old friend of mine, we became writing partners. Yeah, I just did every kind of gig. I worked in reality TV. I've been a production coordinator. I've been a music clearance supervisor. I've been a punch-up writer. I've been a ghostwriter, assistant. So I've done everything. And then finally kind of got, I guess, like my big break in when I was staffed on Survivor's Remorse, which is on Starz. So this is kind of full circle to now be
very
a showrunner
bookend,
of the Starz
very
show.
bookend for your career, for sure.
Yeah.
your career took you through a bunch of different writing rooms and producer roles, and now you've landed at Run the World. Tell us a bit about the show where, like I said, when this drops, the premiere of season 2 is coming out in just 2 days. For those that maybe haven't seen the show or just catching up on season 1, getting ready for season 2, tell us a bit about the show and tell us why you think it's important that we're telling this group of friends' stories.
Well, the show was really fun. The way I kind of got to know the show, I was in my office on Love Life, which is the HBO Max series, and I've been the co-showrunner. And I was just really kind of packing in my office because we had just wrapped. And then I got a call from Lionsgate, asking would I be interested in coming over to Run the World. And I was like, yeah, I think I could be interested. I'd seen a couple episodes of the show earlier, but I binged it again. And really, it was such a vibrant, positive, fun, upbeat world. These fantastic friends. They looked so good and they were so funny and eloquent and amazing. And they had these jobs. And what interested me was just the pressure that falls on Black women to have it all, to have to succeed, have the best marriage, have the best friends, have the best everything, and what it takes to try to attain that and where you can kind of fall and not attaining that, and then the friends being there to support you and pick you back up. And so that's just really what drew me to the show. And with season 2, wanted to just continue that and wanting to fill out the world and characters even more and really focus on growth and change. Because we did have a big change this season with not having this is not a spoiler, but the character Ella is not in this season. And so that was really one of those things that, first, how do we deal with that? So like any showrunner, you get a lot of stuff thrown at you, but it gave us space to really focus on the other ladies and really amplify their storylines and really dig into what life was like as you're trying to be successful. So I was just immediately drawn to the world and to the women.
And just how different they are really did give us an opportunity to dive deep. In your work as executive producer and showrunner, tell us about some of your specific responsibilities, like as a showrunner. What, as a showrunner, are you responsible for?
First and foremost, I am like the creative leader of the show. So it all starts in the writer's room. I put together my season 2 writer's room. And we got started and we just started arcing out the season and focusing on characters, and specifically Renee, because she was the one going through a divorce and, what does that look like and what does her future hold? And, Sandy was kind of in flux with her advisor as a grad student, and she's with an older man and she's kind of playing stepmother to his daughter. And also season 1 ends on a cliffhanger of Whitney and her fiance Ola, and she reveals to him that she had an affair at the end of season 1, and we don't know if the wedding will happen. With those cliffhangers in front of us, getting that together, exploring that, breaking story, writing 8 new episodes. So that's the first and foremost thing of a showrunner, is to be that person that not only beat out the season, but help writers with their scripts, assign scripts, do a final pass, respond to network notes. So that's the first thing. Then I move right over to production. Sometimes needing to rewrite scripts aligns with production. That's the most hectic time.
Yes, it is.
But so then, I moved to New York and got episodes in place. And then you meet with the directors and you meet with all the department heads. We had a wonderful production designer, Michael Fitzgerald. And he was, I think we really bonded because we were both new to the team. He was not the season 1 production designer. I was not the season 1 showrunner.
And I was not the season 1 set decorator. So I do think that we all entered into it kind of with fresh eyes, and we certainly kept the things that were working, and we switched up and we had opportunities to now, as we develop, really build environments for these characters.
I think it's always an interesting thing when new people come into an established show. So this question's going to be for both of you. Rachelle, I want to start with you first. How do you approach balancing what's already existing and the tone of a show that you're inheriting? It already has 8 half-hour episodes under its belt. How do you balance that against putting your own voice into the show, especially when you're taking over for, Lee Davenport was the creator and Yvette Lee Bowser. This is the person who created Living Single, a groundbreaking show in the genre, and you're taking it over. Is there trepidation? Do you feel like a tightrope at all when you're assuming that helm?
Absolutely. Initially I was scared. I was like, and that fear of like, will this live up to the charm and essence of season 1? Am I making the right decisions? But ultimately, I had to put that away. Like, well, don't put too much pressure on yourself, because the show has been laid out for you. You know what season 1 was. These women, you've watched this show over and over again, front and back. I kind of just made season 1 like a part of me, I feel like. Then I could jump into breaking those new stories. But yeah, the balance is very important because, obviously I'm going to have my own ideas, but I do want the tone and style to stay very close to season 1. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to feel like a showrunner change. I want the show, like any show, I think all shows get better season by season. I kind of was thinking about shows like Seinfeld or Friends or even Living Single and Martin and all these, sitcoms where season 1 is still finding itself, is still figuring out what works. And then season 2, it feels more like a well-oiled machine.
Right. That seamless transition behind the scenes.
Right. So taking all the good of season 1 and keeping all that, and then trying to elevate the show to a story that's really getting really deep with the women, really exploring who they are as they continue in their 30s and those life changes. So yeah, I think it's pretty well balanced this out. Yeah, season 2.
You've kind of come up in the new world order of 8 episode seasons, 10 episode seasons. Do you ever think to yourself, man, I wish I had, a 22, 24 episode season like Martin or Living Single or Friends or Seinfeld would have had to get it all right and work out the kinks? It has to be more pressure with so little time to get it done and tell that story.
I still would never wish for 22 episodes as a showrunner. It's so hard. I mean, I wish it for like my writers, but we had a pretty long room. We had about like a 22-week room, which is pretty standard for an 8 to 10 episode order. But yeah, my whole career was spent like doing, okay, this room is 20 weeks, but this one's 16 weeks. This one's 10 weeks. This one's 14 weeks, So yeah, I was really just a gigging writer up until I got Love Life. So, but I'd worked on a sitcom. I worked on the show Mixed Dish. That was 23 episodes. And even I was just a, producer on the show, and I, just covering set a few times and being in the trenches, and like, it's just endless, and I went on maternity leave and the show was still going. I was like, that's how long the show is. I took 8 weeks off to have a baby, and I come back and we still have 8 episodes left.
Only a set decorator likes a 22 or 23 episode season, because you always are balancing the budget by pushing it to the next episode. So when you have 22 chances to defray the costs, it's much better.
You're all about the amortization of it all.
Yeah, totally. The amort budget.
Well, Beth, I mean, the question goes for you as well. Coming into a show that's already established, there's a look, there's a feel. The production design is the production design, but as a set decorator, we talk every week on this podcast about the intimate objects that you put into the set that make it feel lived in and make that world feel real. How do you go about coming into an existing established look of a show against making changes and putting your own spin on things?
I've never been in that situation, believe it or not. So both Michael and I decided to, of course, do it with respect, but also put our personal spin on things. And I think the biggest change that we might have made visually had a lot to do with color and scale. We were also in new stages, and it gave us a chance to expand sets and change them around. You know, in the first season, you learn from everybody's point of view, whether it's, you know, we had our brilliant costume designer, Pat Field, to our DPs, to everyone, sort of what works and what doesn't. And you want to give them the most functional standing sets in the hopes that the show will come back and those sets will be standing for many years. And also, you know, a different kind of take on locations, sort of based on where we were, because we shot in Yonkers. So, you know, we kept certain things and we put our spin on new sets. And certainly our biggest work, you know, we had large sets to build, and that was sort of ours to show what we could bring to the table for the look of the show. And the three girls instead of four, the main characters, it developed a kind of different rapport and relationship. And we worked very closely with the costume designer about who each one of them was, with their colors and their style. And, you know, it was great because they're all incredibly dynamic looking, and their spaces reflected that.
Yonkers, the Manhattan of Westchester County. I've always said that. Rachelle, when as showrunner, as an executive producer, but as a showrunner, you have to probably interact with all these departments, you know, the set decorator, the production designer, costume maker, and bring that all together. How much are you inclined to like input your voice into what they're doing, or do you rather kind of sit back and let them come to you? How, like, collaboration versus forcing your will on those kinds of decisions?
Well, I know I definitely never forced my will on anyone. I was very collaborative.
Yes.
But great department heads all around. If I bumped with anyone, it was probably wardrobe, and over little stuff, you know, oh, let's not wear these earrings or these boots, or, you know, and right. They were a feisty group, and I loved them. But I love their style. And also, whenever I walked on set, I was always amazed. And I could see the collaboration between the departments, because one of my favorite setups was the cigar lounge. Mm-hmm. And that was on location, but the world that came into it was just brilliant. And then what's cool about it is that these leather chairs and this very cool lighting and the smoke, but also the guys are wearing bright colors against the leather. You know, and it's just just gorgeous. It's just one of my favorite scenes, and just everything was very meticulous, particularly with like night shoots or night scenes. So 2 of the apartments were sets from season 1, and one was a location apartment. So with them expanding on Sandy's and Renee's apartments this season, it just felt more comfortable. It felt easier to shoot in, and I feel like we got to kind of do more camera work in those apartments. They really explored and used every inch of the studio space. Yes, I think, you know, sometimes they would come to me, particularly Michael, because, you know, he wanted me to get my eyes on something. You know, we would talk about the vision. But I'll say this, I did pretty much leave wardrobe, costume design alone, because I am not a fashionista by any means. Right. I mostly wore sweats on set, like, you know, because they're showrunners that really match the tone of the show, and they're always elevated in makeup. Like, not me. I'm here to do the job.
No, you're for real.
Yeah, comfy clothes. Comfy clothes is the way to go in 2022, 23 for sure.
Yeah, but also, like, you know, I'm not on camera. I want them to feel like they can get to me, you know, so I don't spend extra time to prepare in that, because I want to be on set and be able to facilitate and be able to answer questions and like be able to talk to props about something in, you know, any kind of department. So I tried to be pretty accessible on set.
Of which you really were. You know, I valued your input for very specific things. You know, we would have a prop meeting and talk about things that cross over in my department, and, you know, whether it was about what they were eating at the dinner table or what food was being served, what kind of feeling it should have. I mean, everything that Rachelle sort of led us to was authentic. That was really, really important to Michael and I, and we got such good feedback and such good input about that wouldn't happen in that family, or like we did a funeral home, that, whatever it was, just the tone be right. And that was something that I always try to achieve in character laden dressing. And we did that a lot, to consider much deeper these characters and how they were being written and represented in season 2.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
What can you tell us about your experience as a woman in the film and television business, when it is, even today, still mostly male dominated, even more so in comedy?
It's interesting because, I'm a Black woman, and I was the showrunner of the show, and still most of the crew, is white, or men particularly. And it's always just like, I guess I'm the boss of all these guys. So that kind of feels good,
You
but
are.
But at the same time, you do hope to start to see more diversity in specific departments. I know Michael was very aware of wanting to bring in more women, more people of color. My wonderful line producer, Caroline, was always mindful of that. But, it could be tough. It could be tough. So me as a writer, I didn't necessarily have to jump through some of the same gatekeeping hoops of people that are crew. Even we had a really hard time getting a certain hairstylist because they weren't a part of this union, and you have to get waivers. And it's just to me, it feels like a lot of gatekeeping sometimes. And the only way to get more women and more people of color on set is to not have these strict rules.
And to be open to training them.
Right. But I was very happy. The show was edited by all women, and one was a woman of color. And I had a woman post supervisor, co-producer, Amy, and wonderful post team, very diverse. So but it is kind of jarring. I didn't really struggle with this, but something you can struggle with is imposter syndrome. I've heard a few horror stories to be real, about Black women directors on the show and Black women showrunners who crew talking about them behind their back, saying they're not qualified, saying they're not good at this. That's very harmful, because people have to get a start somewhere, and we still need diversity in directing. So if this is someone's first episode of officially directing, they may not know all the jargon. They may not know everything yet. They didn't come up, as work their way up from assistant camera or ADs and things like that, but they do have talent. They
Right.
do.
They pay their dues in other ways,
Yeah, and we had so many new, fresh talent, but they were also so willing to ask for my input, for assistance. They wanted it all to be right. And part of it is just being friendly and nice. They're so appreciative, and it was just had such a good tone all the time on set that I think they got a great experience on Run the World, and hopefully we'll be back, and some of them will come back, and it'll be different, because one show can break you. One episode can break you in.
You're making me tempt asking Rachelle already about season 3 news, and Lord, season 2 hasn't even premiered yet. Gotta get on that phone to Starz right away. So
right. Yeah, we're very excited for this premiere. It's been a long time coming, but I really am excited for everyone to see this world again, and to see the changes, see them growing, see all the little things that we've put into it to make it even more entertaining and raise the level and more intricate. So I'm very excited.
There has been quite a delay between the seasons. I'm assuming, like everything else in the industry, it was COVID related, or at least a contributing factor to it. How was it shooting the show and putting it together in this still COVID time, but a little bit past it, where maybe restrictions are maybe a little less? Was it still a hindrance at all, or did you find that it held back the process of putting together a TV show?
Right. Well, let me think of my political answer. No, actually, there are little hiccups along the way sometimes, but everyone was very, safe, and it was really pretty smooth. But it's one of those things that it does feel like it can slow things down, and there's a lot of protocol, and all the prep meetings have to be on Zoom and things like that.
Right.
Where you really feel like you could do better if you're able to, I guess, be more in person and, just not have this wall up a lot of times. But the COVID department did a great job. I think in delays, posts could take a long time. And then ultimately, Starz has to find the right time,
Right.
with their slate of shows, So I'm excited because, it is a summer series.
Yeah.
It's the perfect summer series. It's exactly what you want to be doing in May, June, July, for sure.
I remember one of the best days on the job. We were a couple of departments, wardrobe, DP, set deck, and production design were prepping to do a presentation to the network. And in those COVID days, we were still going to the production office and everyone was masked and we were tested constantly 3 times a week. But we all went into our individual offices and went on Zoom for this meeting. And it was like a home run. And simultaneously, all the meeting ended. We got off the Zoom and all of our doors opened and we were like,
funny.
high-fiving everywhere because they were really happy with the presentation. And it was the weirdest, most awkward thing that we were just all separated and then we were all together.
Let's gather to be isolated.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you run the writer's room virtually or were you actually gathered all together? I know that's been a bane. Okay, yeah. Have you acclimated to that yet? No, I've talked to a lot of writers over the last couple of years. Some love it because they like to write in isolation, but I feel like the majority like the camaraderie and chemistry of being in the room together, and have missed that in the Zoom era of writing rooms.
Yeah, I love the Zoom room because I'm a mom. I have a toddler.
Nice.
I'm tired of driving. LA's a giant city, especially too for meetings and things, because there's so many meetings in Hollywood that could have been an email. So
Right.
At least it was just a Zoom. But also I knew a few of my writers before and we did get together for dinner. It still felt very warm, even on the Zoom, because it was just a really great group. So these writers are just I looked forward to getting on Zoom, and we were efficient and we were having fun. So the Run the World Writers Room was my third Zoom room. My first one was this show on True TV called Tacoma FD. And it was their first Zoom room too. And I remember when the pandemic happened, though, I was out of work because I was on another maternity leave. And then when I got back into it, I was starting to get jealous. Everyone's in a Zoom room. I want to be in a Zoom room because my last room was in person. And it went okay. And then the next one was Love Life, and that was a Zoom room. That one was okay too. That one was more difficult because it was a very tough story to break.
Right.
But I'm glad we weren't in person because I felt like we would have been there till 10, 11 o'clock a lot of times had it not been for Zoom. But we figured that out. And so with Run the World, I kind of knew how to do the Zoom room, how to make it personable, how to make it work. But, of course, I miss the camaraderie and the snacks and the free lunch. And,
There's only so much sweet green you can eat every day, though. Or,
right.
So.
I mean, I think I've said this before, but in a way, the Zoom process helps what I do, what the production designer does, because it really focuses everyone's attention on the visual, and we share the screen, and it makes it really actually incredibly efficient. That aspect of it, that everyone gets to approve and see and weigh in, all looking at the same stuff at once. It's, has its issues in reality when you're dressing a set and stuff and acquiring set decoration. But those meetings are really efficient.
I want to talk a little bit about your writing process, if that's okay, Rachelle. I don't think people appreciate how hard it is to write good comedy that feels natural, and even more so good dramedy that mixes that drama elements and comedy elements and doesn't hinder the narrative. How do you go about breaking your stories? How much are you actively thinking about making it fun or funny without the show is not, telling jokes every 30 seconds, but there is a comedic element to it, a dramedy element to it. How do you go about that process and finding that balance when you're breaking story?
Yeah, you never want it to feel too written, but jokes come from character. So if the character is well defined, their POV, then those jokes come naturally. versus feeling forced or anything. So I think the drama part, I felt it was easier to craft because we did have season 1 and we have these cliffhangers. So goal is like, well, let's pay some of these things off and let's set up some new things. First, kind of breaking the season arc. Where do you want Renee to end up at the end of the season? Where do you want Sandy? Where do you want Whitney to end up? And how did they get there? And just every little piece of their journey, from being insecure about a breakup to finding yourself, in your loneliness and figuring some stuff out. But a breakup can be funny. A breakup can be, all these things, your reactions to them. So I think, just kind of mapping out the season first, just like, okay, this is where we want to go. And then the specifics of every episode. Okay, well, what's the story here? What's the story we're trying to tell? Okay, so this story is about reinvention. So that's the theme of this episode, or this one is about coming into your own, so like that's the story you want to tell for Sandy, for example. Like episode 3 is a great episode about Sandy, like, oh, do I not need to be under this professor? And kind of her starting to spread her wings and realize who she is. So hitting those thematic marks, helping us break the story and getting the okay, so what happens? And then, just breaking the episode and then outlining it and putting some jokes in the outline, getting that outline approved, and then just having fun writing the script. We got it all laid out. So then you just kind of have fun with the dialogue and kind of, the little scenes and jokes that kind of don't connect to the story, but like a little runner or a little, so I guess my process is just to really have fun with it, but make sure that it's all tracking.
Now, this show airs on Starz. It's not on network TV. It's not basic cable. There can be an edgy element to it. I'm curious, though, as a writer, how much do you find you have to change with the times and adjust to what may be politically correct in, say, 2023? Or do you go more and push the envelope if the story calls for it and not worry too much about the PC element of it?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because, I think if the story requires something that is risky or erotic or whatever that is, if it's a sex scene, if it's, a crazy moment, like I'm a big fan of the show P-Valley.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, I know Run the World doesn't need those elements. It's like, okay, this is because I also too, like, I always get kind of weirded out when there's too much sex in comedy. Like I remember being in the theater seeing Wedding Crashers, and it's a very funny movie. But there's a sex scene where just all these women are falling back into the bed and their tops are off. And it's like, what is the point of this?
Yeah.
Like,
just the male gaze, just appeal. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's my thing too, like not to just, entertain the male gaze, because I'm like, ultimately, yes, the show's for everyone, but it's for women.
Yeah.
It's for women.
I've seen some of the men you have on that show though. And you're doing okay with the female gaze. I'm just saying.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. We had fun on set.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. But that's who I care about first for this. Because there are all kinds of shows that can cater to men and women, a drama or relationship show, like one of my favorite shows is Happy Endings. And I'm just like, I know guys love happiness and women, so that's the thing, like this relationships. But for Run the World, I want, black women are the center and they're the core audience. And that's why I really want to enjoy it. And I think all can enjoy it, but that's who I'm thinking about first. And I'm also thinking about the actresses, because when it's a second season, they've seen the first season. And so they have thoughts, they have notes coming in, so I'm trying to, so things like, this season I'd like to try this, or this season I'd like to try that. So I have to take all that into account because, these are my stars, so.
Yeah, and they embody their characters. They embody their characters. And those girls took their environments very seriously. They were involved in such a great way. They appreciated the work and were really communicative about it. It was really enjoyable to see them come in and look over everything. Rachelle, tell us, what advice do you have for our listeners who are hoping to make it as a writer or a showrunner?
Obviously, keep writing. When you make it as a writer, you do get to write a little less, I'll say, because, you have a reputation. So that's kind of sweet, but ultimately at the start, you just have to write. You have to, and also write what you like and what you know. I think there's a lot of writers that try to follow trends and like, oh, everyone's doing this. Well, I'll come up with this, I'll do this. And it's like, No, because the pages won't be genuine. Like I can tell. I'm actually teaching a screenwriting class at BU, and you got to be passionate about the subject. That's going to come through. That's the main thing. And then I think reading your friend scripts, working with people, getting to know people in an authentic, sincere way, and looking for opportunities, when you see it, but still being genuine about it. Because the more you get to know people in Los Angeles or New York or wherever you are, the more naturally you'll get to the next level, or because it really is like, oh, I know this person, they'd be a good assistant. So you're just working your way up, getting to know people organically would be my advice. Because showrunners do remember if you're kind of trying to play them or be phony, or, like everyone thinks LA people are phony, but like actually like we can see through the phoniness. And that would be my advice for young or up and coming writers is be yourself, be authentically yourself.
I think it's important to not be so attached to your work because, it's a ever evolving situation. And I find people starting out in the business so attached to their work that they can't really see past it. But I'm so impressed with production assistants, people that I find who are just staying in touch and they're just communicating, and I have an opportunity. I'm going to remember them and hopefully see them again.
Oh, and then my advice for showrunners really quickly, if you want to be on that track, that's where I would agree. Like you have to be flexible. You can't be precious about everything, because the higher up you get, the more voices you're going to have. They're going to have input, network, studio, right. And you have to be a people person in that regard. If you are I don't know, what's the guy that does Euphoria? Like, not to throw shade, but if you're that married to everything, it has to be so specific. Okay, maybe you're a genius, but no one likes you. So right. I would say finding that balance, and if you want to be a tyrant, you might want to make a movie, because TV is a little different. And people, we put a lot of hours into this, and you really want to have a great environment on set and in your writer's room. Right. And with your network, because they're the ones that are going to tell you if you get another season or not. And there are showrunners that have not got another season because they just weren't likable. Just
good advice.
Yeah, like that's what I would say.
It's so collaborative, and I think people maybe don't think about that or realize that. Look at a TV show's credits. It's not written, directed, starred, edited, post-production all by one person. There's just so many people that you have to work with. So know who you are, but for sure be collaborative. Seems like fantastic advice. Not just in Hollywood. I think in almost every profession, being collaborative and trying to be likable and someone who can work with others is just good life advice. So yeah. We'd love to spill the tea here. We're going to let you go in a second. We've kept you really longer than I thought we were going to go. But we love to spill the tea. So we would love if you could tell us, without being spoilery, any behind the scenes stories you want to share, or a favorite memory from shooting the season that comes to mind. Just some like behind the scenes tidbit that you think about as you've done with the show now for the season, and we're getting ready to watch it. What can listeners take away?
One of my favorite moments was we were shooting an episode, and one of the actresses realized we were in the same house as where they shot Boomerang, Marcus's apartment.
Oh, that's cool.
And what's funny, because I was telling Michael, our production designer, knew I'd been like obsessed with that apartment. I even sent him like pictures of like, okay, I think this should look like this, and it was always Eddie Murphy's apartment from Boomerang. That was always like my reference. And then to shoot there, we were just like freaking out, like, oh, this is where Marcus and Halle Berry, So that was really fun to get hyped up about a location. But yeah, in terms of the season, be prepared for, I think, some big changes and surprises. We shook some things up a little bit. Yeah, just be prepared for more of these women asserting themselves and being strong and independent and not worrying so much about what other people think. I just think thematically, because that's the thing too, like I'm 38 now. And, when I think about being in my very early 30s, I was insecure and, wanted to try and fit in and all these things. But as I got older and more established, it's like, you really just have to be yourself. And I think that's what we're seeing this season. And I just really love these characters. And yeah, I don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, don't.
We'll have to have you back on to spill all the tea afterwards.
Watch it with your girlfriends. Watch it with your girlfriends. Really,
Beth.
I will say which I will say what my favorite episode is this season. My favorite episode is episode 4, written by Kalichi Rama. It just turned I love that episode so much. That's probably my favorite.
That's like the mid-season episode too. Those are always the good ones. Ones. Beth, I know you like to hide items around the set as like your own little personal Easter eggs. Is there anything that you did on this show that you can tell us, or that you want to tell us, or that we should be on the lookout for?
You know what we did on this show is we had a certain amount of stage space. I think the biggest thing that we pulled off, which will be hard to tell, although people can check out my Instagram and I might give you some hints, but literally we built sets and then turned them over practically overnight to be something else. Like we built a therapist's office, and the next day it was someone's workout room. And we built a funeral home, and the next day it was something else. And we used the configuration, and Michael did an incredible job of figuring out how we could take those 4 walls and re-wallpaper them or repaint them and put in different floor covering and use it again. So it gave us an opportunity as a company to spend more time at the stage, which is always good in COVID times especially. But we did a lot of our own interdepartmental magic, I think. Those were more of our kind of inner tricks of the trade, but they really worked.
I love TV magic. How can you not be romantic about television when you hear stuff like that? It's the best.
No, it was an amazing crew. They were all amazing. I walked into just professionals, so my job was easy. Everyone knew what they were doing. I gave them a vision. Okay, let's make sure the art's kind of this. I want to skew more, African and this kind of art. And they found everything that they needed. So this was just a crack squad. So so thank you, Beth. And it made my job easy. So y'all are rock stars.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
I'm sometimes on Twitter, usually tweeting about Love is Blind, but so that's
your timeline is very filled with Love is Blind right now.
Yeah, or complaining, but at Rachelle RW I'm on Twitter, and that's the only one that's public right now.
Okay, good.
I love that. Rachelle, again, thank you for joining us today. Listeners, make sure you mark your calendars. Run the World returns for season 2 on Friday, May 26th at 9:30 Eastern Pacific Time, 8:30 Central. New episodes will also become available at midnight Eastern Time via the Starz app and all of Starz's streaming and on-demand platforms. Rachelle, thanks again, and good luck with the season, and hopefully we'll be back to talk about season 3 at some point.
That'd be awesome. And you were great for Caroline. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Big shoes to fill. So I take that as a compliment. Thank you very much.
A big thank you to Rachelle Williams for making the time to speak to us. I'm excited for everyone to see the new season of Run the World. I think fans are already excited themselves, and I hear a lot of people are waiting for the second season to see what happens, and I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Run the World returns for season 2 Friday, May 26th at 9:30 Eastern and 8:30 Central. New episodes will also become available at midnight Eastern Time via the Starz app and all Starz streaming and on-demand platforms. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Decorating the Set from Hollywood to Your Home at Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please leave a 5-star review. It helps a lot in promotion of the show. 5 stars, people. Thanks so much for listening.
Decorating the Set from Hollywood to Your Home is an original Pod Clubhouse production. Recorded, edited, and produced at Pod Clubhouse Studios. For more information, please visit us online at podclubhouse.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Decorating the Set at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening.